do I keep losing things? This is so interesting. It does not want me to show the slideshow. This is so weird. But we're going to get started. We're just going to show the people. And evidently, they don't want technology today. Murphy's Law is going on. So let me introduce our guests. First of all, tonight is the season of nonviolence. Last night, this is the night that Dr. Martin Luther King was actually assassinated in Memphis 54 years ago. And for us to be doing this tonight, I think is kind of poignant in the fact that we're celebrating the opportunity to enlighten our world because this conversation was prompted by one of the guests, Barry Brown is here. And Barry is a friend of mine from 20 plus years ago. He's a practitioner and he is, I have to say so many things about him, but I am going to get his bio so I can welcome him properly to Conscious Conversations. So as I introduce everyone, let me just tell you why we're here. For every ending, there's a new beginning, and we're choosing wisely. And this is a season of nonviolence. As I said, it started January 30th with the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, and it ends today with King's anniversary. And on this day, we are talking about the Oscars, and the Conscious Conversation says, and the Oscar goes to, and what happened with Chris Rock and Will and Jada Smith. So the conversation is going to be about what our reactions were. Barry called me immediately to kind of see how I was feeling about what was going on. And then I called other people to see, because I didn't really know at first. So I want my panelists, Barry Brown, Deborah Champagne, and Carl Hager to introduce themselves. But I know Barry for years. We just go back from our spiritual community. Deborah and I go even further back. We go back as far as our childhood. We think we went to middle school together. We can't figure that out, but we definitely know we went to high school together and we ended up at college together. And we're still friends to this day. So that tells you a lot. And then Carl is the newest addition to my Team Happy family. And I met him as I was on my trek, on my journey to happiness. And I was in Boston where I was born, and he's there working. And it felt like he was immediately my brother. I met his parents through him, and he is a light in the world. And each of you, Barry first, kind of the order that I pulled you in. Barry was first, then Carl, and then Deborah. Usually women are first, but we're proactive women. We don't care where we fit in. So Barry, since you started this, tell me, and each of you can answer that same question. Tell me the impact of seeing and hearing and knowing what just happened that the nation is talking about, maybe the world, how you first saw it and how it impacted you, and then Carl and then Deborah.
Okay, well, thank you, Angela, and thank you for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. So I saw it probably 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes after it occurred. So I had to rewind, if you will, and see what happened, because it was already blowing up on the web. So I looked, and at first I was really disappointed. And actually, there were so many emotions that went through that it took me a few days to really process it, as I'm still processing it, because there's so many layers to this. And I show that there's so many layers that I'm sure that, we have different perspectives for sure, but the layers go down very, very deep, and they go down very, very wide. So, of course, I'm disappointed, to see this happen from many different levels. And I know where I put the responsibility, and we'll talk about that later on. But to answer your question, my first thought process was deep disappointment. So that was the first emotion or thought process that came through.
Okay, thank you for that, Carl.
So my first, I don't necessarily watch award shows. I was going to a job site with my project manager, and I got in her truck, and she said to me, this was the next day, she said to me, "Did you see the slap?" I had no idea what she was talking about. I pulled it up on YouTube, and my first reaction was, what the heck? Right along with that, I put myself in Chris Rock's shoes and was like, would I have been able to do that? It was the right thing to do, but I didn't know if I was able to do that. And like Barry said, went through a lot of different emotions over a lot of days. I didn't want to speak about it because it took away from a lot of things that did happen that night. In fact, Will Smith winning an Academy. Nobody was talking about that. And I think I was angry. I was angry at him for doing that, not being able to control yourself in an instance. You can't just walk up and smack somebody. And then I went through the process of, well, what is Chris Rock feeling like? And I said this to my wife, you know, as a man, he's probably questioning himself, like, you know what, I should have went and beat him down afterwards, in spite of the fact that I did the right thing. The rest of the week, I was really reluctant to speak about it because it should not have been something that we were speaking about. In fact, but it just kept coming up. And like Barry said, it was very, very disappointing. Very disappointing.
Thank you for that. Deborah, who raised two men, and I don't know whether she's got grandsons too, but we talked about it. And I invited her, and she said yes. So, Deborah, your take.
Yes, thank you, Angela, and good evening, everyone. Barry and Carl and all of you, everyone else in the room. Thank you for inviting me, Angela. Angela and I, we go back way back, and we have anytime we have conversation, there's always conscious conversation ever since we can remember. And I can tell you that my experience that night, my family, we all got together, and I do have a grandson. I have two sons, and proud of my two sons and my grandson, very, intelligent young men. And I think I tried my best to raise them right, and believe that's probably something they would not have done. But we all were at one of my son's house, watching the show, excited about watching it. We turned it into a party because we wanted to see Beyonce, and we were cheering for for Will, and we were excited for this night. And then of course the producer, Will Packer, we were excited because now an amazing Black producer who was producing the Oscars, and he came from HBCU, and HBCUs, Angela and I, we're all we're HBCU pride, and just to have and then my youngest son went to FAMU, so, and he's met Will Packer many times, and it just was supposed to be an amazing night. It was supposed to be an amazing night for our culture. And it's like, it just totally was taken away from us, like the rug was pulled from under us in 1 second of something that was literally, I'm sure everyone across the country, because even in my household, we were like, oh, wow. Will Packer, this is staged, because, he was trying to elevate the culture. So he was just showing the diversity of our culture and how we could work together and have fun and laugh. So we just immediately thought it was a joke. So when the sound went away, and I'm pretty sure all of you experienced the sound going away on the Oscars. If you watched the Oscars that night, the sound was muted. So at first we were like, okay, is this our television, or was that a part of the stunt? What's going on? So when they cut to Will Smith, but they had the volume was off, we couldn't hear anything, but the cameras cut to him yelling at Chris on the stage, which told us this was a real slap. Mm-hmm. First, we thought it was a joke. Mm-hmm. But when they panned over to Will, and he was yelling at Chris on the stage and telling him to keep my wife's MFing name out of your mouth, I literally got triggered. I was triggered so bad that I was shaking. I literally started shaking. I think my whole household, we were like in awe. We were like, this is not happening. So I'm pretty sure if we were shaken, if we were shook to the core, can you imagine how many millions of people in this country was shook to the core when they saw that interaction? And one thing I said, and I'm going to end my for now, and we'll get in, I know we'll have more time to talk about it, but one of the things I thought about was, I wonder how many people saw that slap and probably was just abused by someone, may have been hit by their wife, maybe a child was just struck by their parent, and then they see this happen on national television. Can you imagine how many people are mentally hurt by that action, that one thought? I mean, he didn't even think, obviously he didn't think this through. So many people around the country have been affected by that action. And I'm gonna yield the mic for now.
Thank you. Deborah added even another layer to it. And because this is organic, I'd like to just kind of keep going down that road if anybody wants to, or what was the next reaction? Because when she said that, I thought about domestic violence myself and why Happy Academy really got started, because I was a victim of abuse. And so when I saw that, what got me out of my abusive situation was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with God, praying ceaselessly. So it was a habit of putting a power that's bigger than me first, because what I'd want to do is smack somebody too. And if that eye for an eye. So habit 1 is be proactive, which is the equivalent to step 1 in the spiritual mind treatment of recognizing there's a power bigger. So if I didn't have proactive and a power bigger, I would have reacted the same way Will did. There's something that needs to be in the middle of us doing something, because that's a real thing you said, Deborah. Barry?
Well, I didn't, well, what does it say about our culture, right? As when it comes to the stereotype of African Americans, Black people in particular, being violent. What does that say about the culture? And that's what is really also very unfortunate, because they meaning people outside of our protected group, people outside of our culture, look at us as being violent. So that was an act of violence. And then you could just, share a screen and go to Chicago as an example, and then you look at the culture. So what does it say about the culture? It says so many things. It says a lot of things about the relationships that we have, how we see each other. That slap was so complex. You have two gentlemen, one larger than the other. Now we got some bully stuff going on here too, because he wouldn't have done that had it been someone of size saying the same type of joke. So there's so many different layers to this. But again, getting back to culture, what does it say, about the culture? And 3 and 5-year-olds know, they are taught that you don't hit. Right? You don't hit. That's what you don't do. So everything that you learn in kindergarten, you're supposed to put it to practice. I think what's happening, I think his act was very childish, very extremely childish. Obviously, he's not self-reflective, because if he was, he would have some type of self-control. It's just a very unfortunate on so many different levels. But yeah, I can only imagine what it does to those individuals that were or have been subjected to some type of abuse. The triggers that were, set off as a result of that act.
So what's interesting is that, because like I said earlier, I saw it the day after, and the angle that I saw it from was not the live telecast. And I actually, the clip that I saw showed Will Smith laughing at the joke first, then Jada giving him a look.
Yes.
And him getting up there. So my perspective on it was, oh, so really, like you're a punk that your wife gives you a look.
Well, you're bringing up some good points right there, because that's obviously, and I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but in that relationship, it's evident who has the power.
Exactly. And then, you know, I went further. Again, you're thinking about it the rest of the week of, okay, so that smack really wasn't meant for Chris Rock.
Correct.
It came from a whole bunch of other things
Tupac
that was going on with you.
Tupac
August.
I mean, and the list goes on.
So it was just again back to the same point of it being very disappointing. But I saw it from a different angle. Even my wife, a lot of people didn't realize that Will Smith had initially laughed at the joke. So how do you go in 10 seconds from laughing at a joke to getting up and slapping somebody because of the joke? And people have said that the joke was in bad taste. I didn't even think it was a joke. It was a line, and I don't even know if it was funny.
I think that the excuse that
where you're breaking up a little bit, Barry.
The joke.
It might be your Wi-Fi or something. It's breaking up.
The excuse.
It's still breaking up.
That
you might want to mute him until he gets back clear.
Okay. How do I do that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So he can unmute himself, I guess. All right.
But my comment about that was, gosh, I didn't lost my train of thought. Oh, well, because, and Angela knows my son is in the industry. He's an actor, and so we looked at that joke as being an opportunity for them to have capitalized on that opportunity, because anybody who's seen that movie, you know, G.I. Jane, the young lady, I mean, Demi Moore, she shaved her head. And Jada has proclaimed that she was going to become friends with alopecia, and she was going to make it work for her, that she was going to embrace it and all those things. So my thing is, when he made the joke about, you know, he can't wait to see G.I. Jane the second, they should have been like, as an actor, to me, that was an opportunity to say, hey, give us a call, you know, producers, give us a call, you know, hey, that's a good idea. Because they could have absolutely capitalized on that moment, because everybody would have watched G.I. Jane 2 with Jada Pinkett. That would have been a perfect opportunity. Those producers would have been like, yeah, you know what, that's a good idea. You know what I mean? Let's cast Jada in the next G.I. Jane. Let's revive that movie. Cast, and Jada is an amazing actress when it comes to that kind of, you know, she was in Set It Off. She was just in The Equalizer with Queen Latifah show, The Equalizer, where she played this jewel thief, where she was very physical. It would have been to me, they missed out on an opportunity to make it positive, make that statement positive. So I'm going to yield the mic.
Oh, yeah, Barry, you're back. Thank you, Deborah. That was awesome, girl. You knocking it out of the box for the sisters, girl. You everything you think of, I'm like, I'll have to talk. Barry, we lost you a bit with your voice. So whatever comment you were making, if you could give us that.
Yeah, well, I was stating that the excuse that either the taste was in bad, either the joke was in bad taste, or the excuse that he was defending his wife are both bad excuses. I think those are the low-level, base-level answers to that type of action. I think both of them are weak. But getting back to the point that I just heard, I thought that also, because again, this is multi-layered. I thought that was a great opportunity for her to play G.I. Jane too. I mean, that could have made some money. It could have been a box office hit, but again, it's a lost opportunity. I thought about that too. Right on point.
The thing I thought about was it was a joke. I didn't see it either. I stopped watching the Oscars some years ago because I thought our people should have got it for better product than what they got it for. So it just didn't seem quite the same to me. Although, you know, I do like the Oscars. I honor what people are getting it for. So I missed it too. I didn't hear about it till Tuesday. But on Monday, I watched D.L. Hughley. It was a 2007 comedy show he called Unapologetic. And he did his thing. If anybody could watch that, I would watch that. I see somebody's hands raised, so I will come to you next. But this is what he said that I wrote. He did an awesome show. I was cracking up. I mean, everything he said on that show was applicable to this day. But he said at the end of the show, he came out and he was in your area, DC, Deborah, and said, I love this audience. You know, I respect you. I appreciate the love you give me. And if anybody in the audience is offended by my jokes, he said his little swear word, you know. So it was like they're jokes, man. So and that was 2000. So I didn't know whether they plugged that in for us to be solid and, you know, kind of settle down. You know, we realized that was an offbeat moment. You know, it was reactionary. How do we help get us back on course as a people? Because it did felt like we slid off the block or something. So it's jokes. So for him to be a comedian, Jada to be a comedian, and Chris to be a comedian, that didn't seem to fit.
Good point.
My thing is, at this point, what was that slap about?
It was about him being emasculated. It was a combination of a whole lot of things. He'd been emasculated for a long time. Chris Rock took the hit for Tupac, for this August Asina. He took the hit for all them other individuals who he had to sit at the red table and listen to and be, you know, that's Chris Rock was the conduit for all of those other individuals, to include Tupac, seriously. Because this thing goes down very, very deep. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, he took the hit.
Wow. I think we've got a participant that has a raised hand, Lakaya.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I was just hoping to offer a different point of view.
Yes,
so just from a different, more compassionate point of view, maybe what we witnessed was a mental breakdown live on television, which
That's why Happy Academy is
horrible. And everything you said is valid and true, but at the same time, what we do know is this man recently wrote a book citing the domestic violence in his home that he was raised with.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. He's been very vocal about how his father was very abusive to his mother.
Oh, my.
So instead, I see it as, of course, it was as, you know, a person of color, you know, we feel a certain kind of way when we see those things, especially being portrayed by other people of color, because we know that there's some fallout behind that we kind of own and have a responsibility for. And I think that obviously, I think it's something Will Smith has done for years in Hollywood. He and Jada have kind of owned, you know, being leaders, if you will, in Hollywood, you know, African-American leaders. So it was surprising for everyone. But I also think that, you know, there's a certain amount of abuse that comes with that. You know, we see the fame and we see the glam, and I think that's great. But I also I don't watch the Oscars. I happen to, I think, see stuff posted on Instagram, and I went and saw the video. But before that were the Golden Globes, where Laverne Cox said something on the red carpet to Jada and Will about entanglement, which was extremely inappropriate. This is a red carpet event. Why would you ever talk about her affair with another man? It was so awkward. And I heard lots of other people speaking on that like the next day, but I think it's interesting that no one has kind of put these patterns together and said, hey, maybe, just what if what we saw was a mental breakdown. I did not think that Jada gave him a look as much as she rolled her eyes at the joke. And I think that he saw that in that moment, and he was triggered in the same way that we're all talking about how we were triggered. I think that there was something there that triggered him, that he felt like he needed to do something. And of course, we all know the rest. And it was terribly wrong and inappropriate. You should never put your hands on anyone. And there's something in him that, he wrote this book feeling like he had healed himself from that. And obviously, at the root, that's still how he solves his problems. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate it played out on television. I mean, we all know. But I also think we should just keep in mind that, mental health is fragile. And I don't think because they're celebrities that they are immune to that. I don't think it's my place to assume anything about their marriage or, what or who. We know that the slap was probably intended for other people, but, to think that Jada runs to roost and all of that, I don't think it's my place to say any of that. I don't know them. I only know what I see on television. I don't think that any of that is helpful to the situation. I think maybe we should think that we saw someone have a real issue on live TV that he needs to seek help about.
That's you're on it. You're on it, because that's how Happy Academy took this on, because this was out of nowhere. Because I want conscious conversations around this. I saw that as because spiritual, mental, physical wellness is important, and that's what I do. That's what Habit 7 is: sharpening the saw. And his saw was dull, and it needed sharpening, and we don't know what he was sharpening it on or whether it was sharpened at all. And we have quite a bit of that going on in the world today, and people are not sure what to call it. I think in our community, we try to hide it and dress it up and not even address it at all. That's just how they are. That's who they are. We grew up with them that way. That's just who she is. That's just who. And if we don't, we see this play out like we did. So you nailed it, Lakaya. I didn't want to be the one to say it, but that's exactly what I saw. No matter how much money we have, no matter what our education is, our background, where we live, what we've done, if we don't take care of our mind and our body and our soul, we'll have an episode just like what we saw on television.
So I totally agree. And the compassionate part of it is extremely important. However, this is tough stuff. When you're dealing with this, when you're dealing with consciousness, you're dealing with tough stuff. And if it's not worked out, it's going to come up. And obviously it wasn't worked out. Now, there's some compassion in there, absolutely. But there's also a level of responsibility and accountability. There's certain things you just don't do. Okay, there's certain things you just don't do. You know right from wrong. Mental breakdown, at this stage, I'm over 21, right? Most of us, we're all over 21. Stuff happens in our life, but you have to manage it or it will manage you. I had a mentor, been in my life for 47 years. And to this day, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go see him next week because it's his birthday. He'll be 86. But he told me when I was 17 or 18, you control it and don't let it control you, whatever that it is. At the time, I was a smoker. I smoked cigarettes. And he told me then, you control it and don't let it control you, whatever that it is. And that stuck with me. That stayed with me. So even in a situation, I've been in some relationships that have been quite interesting, to say the least. And there are influences in relationships. When we're in relationship with someone else, we are influencing each other. There's a dynamic energetically that's going on there that we are influencing each other. It's important to keep your head. your head, to keep your energy strong. Because consciousness, this is tough stuff. It's not for the weak at heart, right? This is tough stuff. So you got to take accountability and responsibility. You can be compassionate. Yeah, you can be compassionate. It's necessary. But the work has got to get done on the front end. Okay, head before the heart, as far as I'm concerned, because the heart has got me in all types of trouble. The heart is filled with emotion, and the word motion is in there, so it's moving all over the place. You got to move that up to the head so that you can direct in consciousness where you're going to go. That's where your anchor is. That's where you anchor yourself. He's not anchored, and I say this with all respect. So he's got to do the work. No, writing a book isn't going to do it. You got to anchor yourself. Listen, we all got a story. I got my own story. I'm not going to go into detail, but I have my own story. We all got a story, but we have to move beyond that. And the only way we're going to get there is through consciousness. Now, this conversation is a good thing, but it has to be kept raised to a certain vibration so that we can see it for what it is, and not just act like, oh, it's something light. This is tough stuff. And unfortunately, in another field of professionalism that I have, we call it consequential thinking. That's exactly what it is, consequential thinking. You think before you act. And yes, some mental breakdown, they happen. I've had my own, but I better run back to where I know, and where I know is where I'm anchored. And it's very important to do that. And again, those influences, those relational influences, we have an effect on each other energetically. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of the unseen that's going on that's playing out. We're trying to verbalize it, but it's all unseen and it's playing itself out. We just don't want to play itself out in a negative fashion. In this case, it did play itself out in a negative fashion. So,
thank you for that. Yeah. Deborah, I'm gonna let you jump right in. The thing that kind of just stood up for me right now was Chris not responding. That could have been a brawl. It could have been rolling on the ground, really embarrassed with sports.
He's not built like that.
Okay. Oh, very good. You said that before. I wanted that to come out. I did. Because I thought that again. I'm like, why didn't he punch him back? So that didn't happen. So yeah. So yeah,
Dave Chappelle would have hit him back with the cigarette in his hand.
That's
but
terrible.
also, I'm gonna piggyback on what you said, that he's not built like that, because I had the opportunity of meeting. I didn't meet Chris Rock's mother, but I met her best friend, who is what's her name, the young Holly Pete's mom. So I met Holly Pete's mom, who is Chris Rock's one of her best friends. They're all in the same age bracket, very attractive women in their 70s and 80s,
All right.
And they are real mothers. They are real mothers that really taught their children great life skills. You got to understand, and I know some people who know. I have family members in Pennsylvania, in Philly, who knows Will's mother. Totally different kind of person. Okay. I'm not speaking about anybody's mother or anything, but the what I've heard and have learned about her. He came from the hood. That's a true story of where he came from, and his mother is still kind of in that vein. Whereas Chris Rock's mom, Holly Pete's mom, and Dolores Robertson, that's her name, they are real mothers who are professional moms who have raised sound children and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So like even when Will said, my mom's home with her little sewing crew, they're watching the show. And so I guess what I wanted to say was, what I had written down was that Will Smith and Jada, they also have a platform called Red Table, where they pretty much put their life on display.
Yes.
So when you put your life on display like that, it is fair game, because yes. you are, first of all, number one, you're already a celebrity. You already have you're in a circle of friends where you're royalty in Hollywood, really Black royalty. They were amongst what is called Black royalty. I do PR work. I work with people like Angie Stone and some other celebrities. I've worked with many, and they should have publicists who actually take them through a counseling session before these kinds of types of shows. So your publicist should have already said, you know, they're going to trigger you. They're going to bring up your past. You know, you guys have been talking about your life. Everybody knows about August. Everybody knows about you and Will's infidelity. All of this, you got to remember, this is going to happen. That's what a good publicist will prepare you for those kinds of settings. So, but there is also a thing called, you can't tell some people, you can't tell them anything. There are people like that, even in Hollywood.
Grown folk.
Where you can, because I mean, I've had a couple of clients where I'm like, you know what? If you're gonna do it your way, then why you hire me? Why do you need me if you're gonna do it your way anyway? And so that may be possible that they didn't consult their publicist, or they didn't bring their publicist, or they didn't even counsel with their publicist because of who he is. You know, he obviously wasn't prayed up before he got there. Obviously, Denzel Washington was the closest thing to God, sitting beside him at the place when Denzel says to him, you know, the devil's gonna come and steal, kill, and destroy at your highest moment. So he had a responsibility. They had a responsibility to be prepared. You are sitting on the front row. You're sitting in the front of the room. You are preparing to get your first Oscar, hopefully.
But you know what, Deborah? Deborah, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what you just got finished saying, what you said right there, he should have been prepared. Obviously, he was not prepared.
But that leads to the mental breakdown subject being even more prevalent, because if he did what Deborah says, and these people practice certain things for certain events, that definitely was a breakdown.
Yeah,
without a doubt. And I never even looked at it from that perspective until this evening.
Well, think about the culmination that he went through. You know, the culmination of, again, being emasculated by the one that's closest to you. You know, they say the ones that are closest to you, the ones that can hurt you the most. That was a lot. He went through a lot. I'm a man, been a man since I was 18 years old. And to go through what I had to go through, if I had to go through the red table and listen to that, I don't know how I would have stood, because I watched him as he sat there and listened as he was at the red table. What do you do? That's emasculating. That's not empowering.
But they also discussed in that same conversation that they were at a crossroads in their relationship, in their marriage. They weren't together. They were on a break per se, and he was seeing other people as well. So the fact that it keeps coming back to being like her fault because she cheated, she went on her show to speak about her situation, to talk and try to heal. And once it was out, that's what she tried to do. Now, whether or not they did it successfully, obviously not. I mean, there's obviously some issues that are still there, but that was what it appeared to be designed to do. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone can say, yeah, we were broken up, but the whole world knows, and it's constantly being talked about, and it's constantly being in the space. And clearly, they have been in Hollywood a very long time. They know, and I'm sure understand, the scrutiny of being under the eye of literally the world. And this is the Oscars, which we know is everything. Obviously, this man knew he was getting an award. That's why he was sitting in the front. He broke. He was knocked off his square. Yeah. He didn't, I can bet you money, he didn't know he was going to do that. He did not know it was coming. All of that.
But he didn't break that day. He broke before that day. He walked in there broken. He just snapped.
That may be the case, but that was the straw.
He snapped. Right.
Yeah, that was the straw.
And and it had nothing to do with the cheating. You know, the joke was about her hair. And you're right. It probably, maybe he did see, a flash of a million other things. But, he did apologize. And I'm not saying that makes it better. Just let me say that. But in the apology, first of all, the first apology that he gave that night, where he didn't even mention Chris Rock, was disgusting. However, He did come back. I'm sure, again, his publicist had,
Right.
if they didn't write it, obviously had something to do with it. But regardless, he did apologize. And to know that Chris Rock did not want him arrested, Chris Rock did not want to press charges, that night could have made a scene on stage. I don't mean, obviously, just with the camera on him. I mean, in between commercial breaks, they were going through all of these things, and Chris Rock was still being, humble in terms of wanting to move forward, not wanting to make a big thing out of it. I think, and I don't know it until, we hear him speak about it, but I hope that he realizes that it had nothing to do with him. Chris Rock was just on the receiving end of a terrible, terrible moment.
And then there's trauma too.
I'm sorry.
Say that again.
And then there's Chris Rock's trauma also, because he was bullied as a youth.
Right.
But you can tell that Chris Rock has been getting the right, what do you call it?
Help.
He's been getting help.
He's been in counseling.
You can tell that Chris Rock has a good, solid publicist. You can tell that he had probably spoke to his mom before he went. You know what I mean? You could just tell he was very sound
grounded
in his response to the whole thing. Even when he was walking towards him, Chris didn't know what to expect. He just stood there and took it like a man, and he recovered well. Matter of fact, he was the winner.
Even made a joke about it, made a great joke about it.
Right,
I mean, even in that moment.
Right then and there.
Yeah, how do you do that? In that moment, made a joke about it, which is crazy.
Came on too.
And then Chris Rock had a show on Wednesday.
Yep.
And the crowd started chanting, I think, F Will Smith, and he quieted them down.
Yes, he
and
quieted
basically
them down.
was like, I'm not doing any jokes on him. I got a show to do. And that's huge. And he should be applauded.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And maybe there's some level in him. And I know that he's talked, Chris Rock specifically, about the fact that he's been in counseling since his divorce. And, he's made several jokes about that. But the fact that how it's helpful and how it's helped him see certain things and see things differently. And, maybe he was just open and not necessarily on the end of something terrible, but at the same time, the right person, because he had some level of understanding where he's not attacking, he's not, encouraging people to have, to feed into it more. But, on some level, he sees that Will obviously needs some help. And that's what I think we all should see. I mean, he needs help.
I want to pose a question to the men. If you don't mind, Angela.
I don't mind.
Okay. What I want your take on this could have really set our culture back, and plus with all the things that's going on in the country with them, wanting to say Black people are violent, which we know that's not always the case. We're not, violence have really been perpetuated by, slavery and all those things. We know the root, but they pretty much, want to say in the news and in about our culture that we're just violent and that we abuse each other and we, they kill each other. They're fighting and killing each other. And then you see one Black man who totally obviously has a breakdown or whatever, or triggered by something that makes him work out. I mean, I'm not even going to say it's out of character, because his son literally tweeted after his father hit him. His son tweeted that this is how we do. This is how my family do. This is how we do. He was bragging about it. Like, this is what the Smiths do. You know what I mean? So, how do you all feel about, okay, first of all, you had a Black producer who did an excellent job. You had several Black people who won awards that night, and Questlove didn't get his moment, which was sad. And then you had Chris Rock, who literally was a class act. how do you all feel that those actions of the actions of all of the African Americans that was a part of that night, including Will Smith? I guess I'm asking this question. Hopefully you understand the question. What I'm asking is that, do you feel like Chris Rock behavior and of course having the Black producer who did an excellent job, and then now we kind of like balance it out so they can't really say Black people are just violent, because we showed one Black man who had restraint, then you had one man. Okay, I'm gonna yield the mic to the men.
I don't know the brother's name. I'll let you take your first round of this.
So I feel that Chris Rock's actions have not been applauded, have not been viewed, have not been spoken about. And that's really disappointing. One of the things that I said very early on was that Samuel L. got his first Oscar. Shaq and Steph Curry got an Oscar. There was a Black DJ, there was a Black producer, and all of that got overshadowed by another Black man. And no, none of their accolades, none of them, including Chris Rock's action or non-action, whatever way you want to look at it, was not applauded. And that's extremely disappointing.
I think that one bad apple spoils the whole bag. So what happened, I think that Will Smith's actions really took away from what we do, and we do great things individually and collectively. But that one act said so much. It did so much. So again, I as I said at the outset, I am disappointed. But when it comes to the violence, I worked in criminal justice for close to 27 years, about 27 years. And unfortunately, I saw firsthand some of the violence that occurs. Now, that's not to say that only Black folk are violent, because when you look at, nations, this nation in particular, and I say this as a veteran, there's more bombs and more weapons, and there's more violence that have been, we've received more violence than we put out, but there is violence, and it is violence within our own community. I think this is a moment for us to wake up, particularly as Black men, to see how we see each other. Because, even the act of slapping a man in the face is a disrespectful act. It is a disrespectful act. You punch him, that's a different story. But if you slap him, that's a disrespectful act. So there's so many layers to this. So again, as I mentioned from the outset, it is disappointing. But he took away from everything that, powerful, intelligent, creative Black men did that evening.
Did we answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just your perspective, because that's the way I felt. I feel like when they say, like we like to say, there's more love in the world than hate, but hate sounds more louder. I think there are more people who are good in the world, but the hate always sounds louder. It's the same thing.
Let me touch on that, because you're making a really, really good point, because as Carl had mentioned, not too much is being said about what Chris Rock did or his actions, but more is being said about what Will did. I think that his actions, talking about Chris Rock, speaks louder. That's we got our divine nature, we have our human nature, right? And they're both within us all, right? We got our divine nature, we got our human nature. Which one shines forth, right? Oftentimes people at our realm and the physical earth, we let the human nature come through, but sometimes can not be so good. Look at Ukraine, right? But our divine nature, those are the things that I think Chris Rock showed. And it's not spoken about because it's silent. It doesn't have to be spoken about. There's a power in that.
Well, it brings me to remember one of my mentors told me, you can do 150, 250 things good, and you do one bad thing.
There you go.
Everybody will remember that.
There you go. There you go. Boy, isn't that a statement?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And we're counting down. We've got 2 minutes left. So as we wrap up, the only thing I want to close with a promise that I want everybody to say to themselves as I read the word I. But as I thank my guests for coming, we could talk about this forever. I'm so glad that you put a conscious light on it. I think you guys and ladies touched on everything that was floating through my mind, because Barry put some things in there I didn't think about. Carl put some things in there, Deborah, and then you put some more things in there. So the biggest thing we put in there is mental wellness. We have to take care of ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually, and social emotionally. Whoever's hanging around us matters. So you can take care of yourself so good, but you can have this toxic person around you, you're gonna get sick.
Birds of a feather.
The birds of. Thank you for announcing my book. It's cute. I like that.
I want to also say that I hope this is an opportunity for real change for them as well.
For all of us. For all of us. So that's what we're going to do. You're part of Team Happy. Everybody on this call, we're supposed to be happy on this planet. And if we're unhappy too long, we get sad. When we get sad too long, prolonged sadness goes to depression. When we get depressed too long, we just saw it on television. You cannot be in an ill state too long without something happening. Anything that goes untreated worsens. And sometimes treatment is just getting away from the drama that's in your life. So this is the promise I want everybody to take with them at 8:30. Come look at Happy Academy. We're going to be doing stuff. This crew you just talked to, I'm going to invite them back. You want to find them through me, reach out. And it's myhappyacademy.org. There's phone number, email. I was going to have it up, but the power of this talk was greater. So everyone take this for yourself. I promise myself to be strong, that nothing can disturb my peace of mind. To talk about health, happiness, and prosperity to every person I meet. To look at the sunny side of everything and make my optimism come true. To think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to expect only the best. To be just as enthusiastic about the success of others as I am about my own. To forget the mistakes of the past and press on to greater achievements of next. To wear a cheerful expression and give a smile to every living being. To give so much time to improving myself that I have no time to criticize others. To be too large for worry, too noble for anger, and too strong for fear. Too happy to permit the presence of trouble. To think well of myself and to proclaim the fact to this world, not in loud words, but in great deeds. To live in faith, faith in myself, and faith that the world is on our side as we stay true to who we are and ourselves. And so it is.
And so it is.
So it is.
All right. Thank you, everybody. See you in the future.
Have a good evening.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. I love you all.
Thank
Be
you.
happy.